Why do people invest? Have you ever thought about that? Hey, I'm Sayer. This is Integrating Bitcoin, and I teach you things about money that you might not know and relate that to Bitcoin. Investing is actually a really interesting thing. Some people invest, some people don't. Some people don't because they're afraid of losing their hard-earned money. But the people that have extra money and are saving it, maybe they choose to invest their money. And a big reason they do that is because they're incentivized to do so. Because holding cash, whether we realize it or not consciously, is always losing value over time. I think there's this idea that people invest primarily to grow their wealth. And while that's true to some degree, if you get a good investment, primarily it's to preserve the value of your money. Because you're buying a more scarce asset that holds its value better over time than the cash that you hold. Now, on the flip side of people that do invest, there's the people that don't. And they're generally just afraid of investing because they don't want to lose their hard-earned cash. But whether or not you directly invest in assets yourself, you're still going to be affected by the results of people investing in assets, because what that does is it creates a higher price on top of the utility value of the underlying asset. So it essentially inflates the price of things. So business owners, entrepreneurs, and any investor in general, they're looking for a place to park their economic energy, their money, into an asset that will not degrade over time. It's not going to leak its value, its stored energy, as quickly as fiat currency does, like the US dollar. The top 3 asset classes that get used for this store of wealth, the store of capital, is real estate, US Treasuries, and gold. But who decided these are good assets to use? It's not like someone just said, yes, these are the assets that are good for this. It comes down, again, to their properties. And if you missed my video yesterday, I talk a lot more about what makes good money, and technically, real estate is being used as money as well, because it has many properties of money that rate high, like scarcity and durability. So it preserves the value of the capital much longer over time than just holding cash would. The interesting thing, though, about gold and real estate is that they both have a utility value. They both have this intrinsic use case in our society, right? Gold we use for jewelry, it's desirable, it's a precious asset. We use it for other things like electronics, etc. And real estate, we're using it for shelter. So it has a real use case in our society. But then because these assets have characteristics and properties of good money, they also get used as a store of value by investors. And this is why prices for real estate are so astronomically high. It's because they're being used as a store of value. The whole real estate market as a whole is used as a store of value for investors. So therefore, the premium gets jacked up on top of the actual utility value of the home. So say you're just someone who works a job and you want to save up and get a house, and you maybe don't invest anything. Well, you're still having to participate in this investing ecosystem because of the premium that's been put on top of the utility value of the home. You're paying the price for that. For a visual, let's take a look at some charts. I generated these using ChatGPT's deep research to estimate the intrinsic utility value compared to the monetary premium of both gold and then real estate we'll look at. So we're looking at gold here, and we can see that the intrinsic value, which is the lower portion of this bar, is around $900 per troy ounce. It was estimated. ChatGPT said it was estimating that it was somewhere between $500 to $1,000 per ounce was the actual intrinsic value. Of course, that's hard to determine, but it did its best. So what that means is everything else on top of that is the premium value that has been injected into it as a use of a monetary asset. So this is the difference, right? There's the utility value, and then there's the premium on top of the utility value that you have to pay. So even if you wanted to just use gold for the utility purposes, like jewelry or something else, you're having to pay the monetary premium on top of that as well, not just the utility value that's being demanded in the market. All right, so now let's take a look at the global real estate value composition. Looks like this data was pulled from the year 2022. And we can see on the bottom the utility value of real estate in general. Now this is averaged across the entire globe, that's what I asked for, is approximately 65% of the actual total cost of real estate. The monetary premium on top of the utility value is 35%. All right, so what does this mean in practice? Let's say if you were looking at buying a home today for $300,000, we would break this down and we can see that the premium that you're paying for that home is around 35%, which is $105,000. And the utility value of the house is 65% of that total price, which is $195,000. So essentially, what this is showing us is that if real estate was not used as a store of value, if it was not used as money, then the house that you could purchase for $300,000 today would actually only cost you $195,000. What's interesting about Bitcoin, though, is that it doesn't have a utility value. It's only the premium. It's literally only used for a store value or only for money. It's not competing with another market. If you want to get Bitcoin, you're purely getting it just to store your economic energy. You're not getting it for another use case, and therefore you're not having to pay the premium to obtain the use case of Bitcoin for another reason. You're just purely putting your wealth there and saving it and storing it. Over time, capital always seeks a lower state of entropy. It's always going to seek a more stable place to preserve itself. Just like we talked about in yesterday's video, how like better money will push out worse money based on the properties of it. The same is true for capital preservation tools. And real estate is a capital preservation tool. Imagine this high upper lake that's just full of water, it's full of liquidity, of economic energy. It represents real estate. Well, we're opening up this new channel where this liquidity is starting to drain off and flow into Bitcoin. So just like water doesn't run uphill, liquidity is going to flow to the best place that it can be held. And the effects of this, whenever it drains off real estate, it's going to continually to drain it off over time, and that will bring real estate back down to the cost of its utility value rather than having the premium on top of it. And I actually know a couple people that have already done this. They have sold their property and bought Bitcoin with it. So this is not just a fantasy. This is starting to happen. That means that over time, as more and more people start selling their investment properties and moving their capital into Bitcoin, that it's going to slowly bleed off the premium of the real estate market, and it's going to accumulate into this new pristine capital storage network tool called Bitcoin. And that's actually true for any asset that has a premium attached to it on top of the utility value. It's estimated that there's around $700 trillion worth of stuff in the world whenever we price that economically. And it's also estimated that maybe around half of that, so $350 trillion of that, is just a store of value. It's the premium on top of the utility value of all this stuff. So Bitcoin can absorb all of that liquidity if people move it into the network. I believe that over time that will absolutely begin to happen as people realize that Bitcoin is the pristine capital and it's the best place to store wealth and value over time because it can never be diluted. There's a good chance you're wondering, why the heck would somebody sell their investment property that's probably producing some cash flow for them and sell that to buy Bitcoin? That's a really good question. It's a big topic though, and a whole other video would be required to discuss that at least. So let me know if you have any questions about this one, and I'll be covering that in a future video at some point. And I'll catch you next time. Thanks, guys.